Reklev has no longer access to Zoroark GX's favorite card, but I guess we'll get to see what deck he thinks is the best deck in the format right now and what he's been having the most luck with in testing.
Absolutely. I'm excited to get this match started. Of course, we don't get to see Japanese players at tournaments very often in our coverage, but here at the World Championships, we have players from all over the world, and we'll see. It looks like we got a Malamar deck here. And we'll see what Tord has brought to this event. Take a look at his prize cards. We see that Ninetales. He has brought Reshiram and Charizard GX.
Yeah, but it looks like he's going with the version including Stellar Wish Jirachi, whereas the Green's Exploration build has been very popular. Seems like he's gone for a bit of a different direction with it. And we are going to kick things off. Round number 2, Yu Ito versus Tord Reklev is a go, and that's an Ultra Necrozma in the active.
Sure is. We saw the Beast Energy Prism Star in the prize cards, so now we see the Ultra Necrozma GX. I would say probably the least popular variant as the cards slide all over the table. That energy trying to get away with the skateboard. But Ultra Necrozma, I think, has fallen by the wayside and turned into probably the least popular Malamar variant in this new standard format. So it'll be interesting to see if Yu Ito has brought some sort of innovation to this style of deck, or if he just thought, you know what, this is the way to do it. But oh no, that is an awful start. Off the Stellar Wish, fails to find a supporter card, passes the turn with no Inkay in play, had to use the energy attachment to retreat Ultra Necrozma. This is a disaster.
Ultra Necrozma is tempting to play, I think, because it can hit such big numbers, and Tag Team GX Pokemon have such high amounts of hit points that getting a one-hit knockout is very tempting. But ultimately, this entire deck is predicated on having Inkay in play early to evolve into Malamar and get that Psychic Recharge online. Without them, you have no engine, you have nowhere near enough energy to accomplish the goal of taking those one-hit knockouts on Tag Team Pokemon with Ultra Necrozma. Setup so incredibly important for this deck, and we're seeing a lot of it because Mysterious Treasure is one of the only search effects in the game now that Ultra Ball has rotated, so it's nice to have that available with Psychic Pokemon, but still, if you don't get that set up with Malamar very, very quickly, you are going to fall behind.
Yeah, I think turn 1 setup is more important for Malamar than any other deck. When you don't get Malamar into play, it means you don't attack turn 2, and everything goes downhill from here. This is a big Stellar Wish from Tord, though. He also doesn't have any supporter cards, but he finds the Welder off of his top 5 cards, and he's going to be off to the races.
That is the ideal supporter card, be able to accelerate energy, draw 3 cards immediately. Reshiram and Charizard GX is not as fast as, say, the perfect start from a Pikachu and Zekrom tag team, but you do have some energy acceleration with that Welder, and that's going to give Tord that bit of advantage that he needs to take control of this game, especially since Yu has such a slow start.
So there we see Welder. This is the engine that makes this deck work. You get to attach 2 Fire Energy cards from your hand to one of your Pokemon, and then draw 3 cards. And that does not count as your energy attachment for the turn. So as you see here, he can attach a 3rd energy this turn, and it just lets you power up those big attacks so much faster. And you can see Tord senses weakness in his opponent. He's going to play this Super Scoop Up, try to pick up his Jirachi so he can use Double Blaze GX. This may seem like a waste, but his opponent played no supporter, did nothing on his first turn, and he's just going to burn his GX attack to try to close out this game as quickly as possible.
That 230 damage from Flare Strike is going to be enough to take every knockout that he needs, very likely, with the deck that Yu Ito is playing. So Double Blaze isn't going to be really necessary. It's just more important that Tord get that early advantage of a knockout here.
Oh, I see Palpad. That's an unusual card in this Reshiram and Charizard deck, but shuffles Welder back into your deck. I think if you had a choice, you would play like 10 Welder in your deck if you had no deck restriction.
Sounds nice to me.
So shuffling Welder that you've used up, not bad if you get to use more of them over the course of the game. Although we see the Dede change from Dedenne GX, going to throw away a couple stadium cards, including the Heat Factory Prism Star, but Tord feels like it is very important to keep digging here, and I think he wanted that card in particular, Vulpix, so you could evolve into Ninetales and eventually use that ability to target down Inkay on the bench before they can evolve into Malamar. This is an excellent start from Tord He's going to take a knockout turn 2, and his opponent needs to top deck a way to get a Pokemon to even stay in the game. And that's a Psychic Energy. That is it. Tord Reklev takes a quick game 1.
Okay. Tord would have the energy attachment for Flare Strike next turn, which would be enough to knock out the Ultra Necrozma, and you has no Pokemon to bench. We're going to game number 2. And that is just about the worst setup I've seen from a Malamar Psychic deck in a very long time. So you is going to be hoping that he can get a better one in game number 2. He needs Inkay on the bench on turn 1.
Yeah, and it always feels terrible, right? You have your opening hand, you're like, this isn't very good, but at least I have Jirachi to fall back on. And then you use your Stellar Wish, and you go, never mind, this is awful, life is terrible, and then your Jirachi gets knocked out, and you lose. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, it just feels miserable.
Yeah, and going into this event, the other casters and ourselves, we're talking about what we expected to be very popular, and Malamar is something that came up, but I think that we sort of dismissed it as not being the best idea because it can be very inconsistent. You can have games that look like that, and it just feels quite hopeless because you don't get the necessary setup that you need. Certainly when you get it, the deck is very powerful. The energy acceleration is second to none. It can hit some really high numbers with Ultra Necrozma's Photon Geyser, but I don't know. It just seems like it's so hit or miss that it's a big risk to take.
Yeah, when the deck works flawlessly, it feels like you're unbeatable. It feels like no other deck can stand up to the power of this deck when you're getting 2-3 Malamar out, recharging a bunch of energy every turn using your gigantic attacks. You can attack as quickly as turn 2, get one-hit knockouts every turn. It feels like you're unbeatable. But the truth is there's a lot of things that can go wrong along the way. There's a lot of moving pieces. You need to get multiple Inkay out early on. You need to then evolve them into Malamar. Sometimes prize cards can hurt you. Sometimes you don't get energy in the discard pile, so you can't Psychic Recharge. Sometimes you don't get an energy attachment on the first turn, so you can't attack turn 2.
Sometimes you have to mulligan several times, so your opponent just draws a bunch more cards.
That happens, yeah. Sometimes you have it all set up and you can't find a way to switch out your active Pokemon, so you still miss a turn 2 attack. I think that's the most frustrating one, when you have a Jirachi active and you're just like, all right, I just need to find an escape board or a switch, and we're good. I got 3 energy on my Giratina, and you just go, oh, I'm just going to pass with 3 energy on my Giratina on the bench. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but when it goes right, there's no doubting Malamar is perhaps the most powerful deck in the standard format. It's a double escape board prize for Tord, and 1 Ultra Necrozma GX prize for you. And we're going to kick off game number 2. Hopefully we have a much better game than the first one.
That's all we can really ask for. It's the World Championships. These players have put in so much time and effort to get to this point. You just want them to have some good matches.
Yeah. Both players starting off with Jirachi, so this is probably going to be a good game.
Viridian Forest going to allow you to get those energy into the discard to Psychic Recharge with Malamar later on, while simultaneously searching out any basic energy that he's got in his deck. Looks like it's 7 Psychic, 2 Metal, and then that Beast energy.
Yep, so we'll see what kind of approach you wants to take in this matchup. I think you can go a couple different ways. You can just try to power up Giratina, your non-GX Pokemon, and try to have that single prize attacker onslaught, or you can do what you is doing and just try to charge up Ultra Necrozma GX. When you get enough energy on it, its Photon Geyser attack is capable of knocking out tag team Pokemon in one attack. So if you can charge it up early and catch your opponent before they can deal with the Ultra Necrozma, you can take big prize swings. You know, you take 3 prize cards for knocking out a tag team, and they only take 2 for knocking out their Ultra Necrozma, so you can see how the game plan works out. And you, continuing with a pretty good setup, gets 1 Inkay, and still hasn't used his Stellar Wish. So he's going to be looking for another mysterious treasure or perhaps Pokemon communication to grab another Inkay this turn. You really need 2 Inkay on the first turn to feel safe. 3, you feel like a winner.
He's going to grab a Lily. It is the first turn, so if he uses it, he can draw up to 8 cards. Pokemon communication, and probably go for another Inkay like you were saying. In the previous standard format, with Guzma available, it was a lot more likely that one of your Inkay would get knocked out before you're able to evolve it. Now these Inkay are going to be a little bit more sticky, a little bit more difficult to target down for Tord.
Yeah, and in fact, the only way he plays to bring them out is that Ninetales, which is an evolution Pokemon. You have to, I mean, you see it coming, right? It has to evolve from Vulpix into Ninetales.
Puts up a big sign saying, hey, I'm gonna knock out an Inkay, just so you know.
Yeah, there's no threat of double custom catcher out of nowhere. It's I'm evolving to Ninetales. And then every turn you will have that threat of, hey, Ninetales can target down pretty much any of your bench Pokemon. But until that happens, your bench Pokemon are safe. So Tord trying to figure out what order to do things in. He's going to Acrobike first before using Stellar Wish. These are some tricky decisions that may seem trivial to a lot of people, but they can be big difference makers. I'm going to trust Tord on this one. He's a pretty smart guy. Decides that playing Acrobike is the way to go.
You get enough international championship victories under your belt, and we start to just trust your judgment.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about Tord's season, his path to get to day 2 at the World Championships.
It's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, he really didn't play as much as he has in years past. He kind of took the season off, traveling to minimal events, but he made the most of his opportunities. He also caught a few lucky breaks along the way. At the Latin America International Championships, he initially finished 9th, and then there's a player that got removed from the tournament, and he ended up finishing in 8th instead, which got him some extra championship points. He finished exactly 32nd at a regional championships, which was the cutoff to get championship points. So there were several instances where he finished in the exact position he needed to earn championship points. And it all added up to him barely qualifying for day 2. So it's been a good run for Tord.
He got here. That's the important thing. And now we just need to see if he can take advantage of that. Benching a Vulpix, telegraphing that Ninetales.
Yeah, this is another great start for him. He Dede changes into the Welder as well. And he's going to use this Viridian Forest. Go ahead and search for a Fire Energy. Get one into the discard pile. Just thin some cards out of his deck.
18 total Fire Energy in the deck.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's just about the most basic energy you're going to see.
Yeah. A lot of these decks we see like Fire Crystal to recover Fire Energy from the discard. Opting not to play as many actual energy, but playing those trainer cards that can let you get them. This build, just playing a lot of energy. 18 is almost a third of your deck. We're approaching theme deck territory.
We're looking at like 23 for a theme deck. I mean, just
Have
valuing.
some respect. There's about 20.
That's fair. You would know better than I would. That's for sure.
But yeah.
Just valuing always having energy to attach with Welder, to always be able to capitalize on that and accelerate very quickly. Hey, the Garchomp Ultra Prism theme deck, that was some good stuff.
Yeah.
You could almost play that competitively.
Play a Cynthia, you hit for 200.
It was not bad.
Yeah. The new one is the Charizard one, though. You got to look out for that. But right
got
now,
Charizard every time.
yeah. But right now we have Reshiram and Charizard GX. Once again, turn 1 Welder, 3 energy on that big tag team Pokemon GX. I'm not quite sure if Tord will be as aggressive as game number 1 if he wants to double blaze GX, if he has the option. But another strong setup. We might be entering a game of who can bring out the other person's benched Pokemon first. You know, if you can power up his Ultra Necrozma and get double custom catcher, go after the Reshiram and Charizard, he'll probably want to do that. But Tord will be basically trying to do the same, trying to get out his Ninetales next turn to drag out the Ultra Necrozma GX and knock it out before it can get enough energy. But here we see the Heatran GX. This is a tech card that has showed up in some Fire decks, a brand new card from Sun and Moon Unified Minds. It's got the Burning Road ability. If it moves from your bench to become your active Pokemon, you can move as much fire energy as you want from your other Pokemon to it. So you can kind of power it up out of nowhere.
Somewhat similar to Aerotrail on Tapu Koko GX, although you do need to find a way to make it your active Pokemon on that turn.
Oh boy. Shuffling mishap. I think we got everything. It's always the risk of shuffling with physical cards. We humans are not perfect.
Especially if you've got tiny hands. It can be very difficult.
Yeah. Or perhaps if you're nervous at the World Championships, something like that.
Production would like to note Tord has perfectly sized hands.
All right, so there we see Heatran GX with the Burning Road, and Tord is getting aggressive. Going to go ahead and use the Steaming Stomp. 130 damage, times 2 for weakness, but he gets a turn 1 knockout with that Heatran GX, putting his opponent in an awkward position, trying to figure out which Pokemon to even send out here. Of note, Heatran GX has 190 HP, which annoyingly puts it out of range for a 2-energy Photon Geyser, which would hit for 180 damage. So perhaps a calculated risk here from Tord. He knows his opponent can get double Malamar and a switch and get Photon Geyser for the knockout, but odds are this Heatran is going to make it through the turn.
And very importantly, the line that Tord took on the previous turn allowed him to save his GX attack. So if he, for some reason, does need that Heatran GX attack, maybe to take a knockout on a Gengar and Mimikyu GX later on, he'll still have it available to him.
Yeah, and if Ultra Necrozma did come out, he could also go Welder, attach energy for turn, and Double Blaze just for straight 200 and get the knockout there. So I think even if this plan backfired, he had a way out, but it's looking like a pretty good plan right now. That Heatran's definitely going to get his money's worth. And Yu is stumbling a bit. This is the danger of playing a Malamar deck. You have a decent setup, but not a great one. No turn 2 attack, and in the face of pressure, this is not looking good. And Tord top decks the Ninetales for the turn.
Can he go after that Ultra Necrozma?
Yeah, or simply go after the Malamar. I mean, the prevailing strategy against these Malamar decks was you Guzma out the Malamar, take away the energy acceleration, and then the deck crumbles from there. You know, Custom Catcher is harder to do that with, but Ninetales and 18 Fire Energy, you can do it pretty consistently.
Plus, it just gives you the option of a non-GX Pokemon. There are certainly some decks that are trying to prevent GX Pokemon from dealing damage with that Luminous Barrier on a Lowland Ninetales.
Yep. All right, so we see Welder. Tord trying to figure out, do I attach 2 energy or 1 to the Heatran? All right, he's going to go for the GX attack this turn then.
Hot Burn GX, 50 damage times the amount of fire energy attached, so right now hitting for 200.
Yep, so we see the Ninetales coming into play. He can Giant Hearth for 2 more fire energy and use that ability. 9 Temptations, 1 for each of the tails, and go after that Ultra Necrozma GX. And Tord Reklev is on a roll. He's had an excellent start in Game 1 and following it up in Game 2. And Yu Ito is completely on the back foot, just blindsided by this. Just relentless aggression starting from turn 1.
It's a blazing fast game plan that Tord's been able to apply both games, taking out a Pokemon on his first turn. Things are just going swimmingly for him. And yes, taking out the Malamars very early on is a prevailing game plan against this deck. But if you can just take the threat away entirely, that works too.
Yeah.
Even if there was an Ultra Necrozma to replace the one that just got knocked out, there's still not enough energy acceleration to power it up on this turn.
Right, yeah. It would take like Beast Energy, a double Malamar, a switch, and just things that are not very reasonable to happen. And man, I mean, what does Yu do in this situation? He's going to reset Stamp. I don't think that'll hurt Tord too much. His hand size was pretty low already. But, boy, who knew? Heatran GX just bringing the heat.
It's just good enough. 130 is enough to take a knockout onto Giratina or the Malamar, the Inkay, whatever it may be. And as long as you have, you know, a Reshiram and Charizard waiting in the wings to hit those bigger numbers that you might need, this is working out very well.
Yeah. And you saw Tord in his video earlier saying he loves to be proactive, and you can see why right here. He is asking the questions to you. Do you have a response to my Heatran GX? And if the answer is no, I'm going to keep knocking you out every single turn. This Reshiram and Charizard deck can be quite aggressive at times, presenting attacks sometimes as quickly as turn 1. And what do you do in this situation as a Malamar player? This is something that comes up a lot. You're kind of one card off of what you need to do. He can communication here, get a second Malamar, but does he have all the Psychic in the discard he needs? Does he have a switch to move the Malamar from the active spot? Again, when everything goes right, everything's fine. Your deck is awesome. But when you miss just one piece of the puzzle, none of it works.
When you stumble with this deck, you fall flat on your face. With some other decks, when you stumble, you're able to sort of pick yourself back up, keep going. This is a deck that requires every step of the way things to go very right, and if they do, then you are nearly unbeatable. But right now, that's just not happening here.
Might be time.
Yeah, maybe. Certainly.
Here comes Hypnosis. Never a good sign. But Heatran does stay asleep. We do need to turn that card the other way. It's not paralyzed. It is asleep.
Somebody get these gentlemen some counters.
But that is going to buy our Japanese player a turn. There's no switch in hand for Tord. That Heatran GX is asleep. So he is going to miss his attack this turn. But he can use Ninetales' ability once again. He can drag out perhaps that Giratina, something with a high retreat cost, maybe even the Malamar, and make things awkward for his opponent. There's one card on Tord's bench that you should pay attention to, and that is the Victini Prism Star. With 18 fire energy in your deck, the Infinity attack becomes very powerful. It's 20 for each basic energy card in your discard pile, and then you shuffle them all back into your deck. So it's a way to recycle all those fire energy you're using, and also sometimes just get a one-hit knockout. Imagine if you have 13 energy in there. That's 260 damage.
That's quite good.
Yeah.
And again, just another single prize attacking option, which is pretty important in the meta right now. You don't want to be left with a deck that is entirely GX Pokemon, because if you hit the wrong matchup, you will have nothing that you can possibly do.
All right, so this is the opening for you. He bought a turn with the Hypnosis. That was a huge, huge break for him. And now he needs to capitalize on it. He is playing the Hapu right here, digging for something, trying to set up just at least an attack. You have to start doing some damage here. You're down 3 prize cards. As great as Giratina is, it's not the best in this situation. It's only got 130 HP, so it can be easily knocked out by that Heatran GX. But you got to do something. You can't just sit back and let your Pokemon keep getting knocked out.
The whole point of buying yourself a turn is that turn will be really, really good.
Yes.
And it still doesn't seem like that's what you've got going on here.
He does find the second Malamar, so he can at least double Psychic Recharge now. And that Heatran GX is still asleep. That is actually quite important. It did not recover between turns. And if it stays asleep one more time, that could be a game-changing moment here. So Yu is going to go for the Shadow Impact, 130 damage, and this is a pretty big flip to see if that Heatran GX wakes up.
It's the difference between getting a knockout with the Heatran GX onto the Giratina.
Oh, it's Tails.
Actually being able to threaten a 2-turn knockout onto Heatran if Tord can't move it out of the active.
It's still asleep. This could be a huge moment for Yu Ito. His back was against the wall, and perhaps the Hypnosis from Inkay has saved him here.
There are 2 copies of Switch in the deck for Tord.
Man, it's amazing watching this deck. Usually by the time you've used Giant Hearth for like the 2nd or 3rd time, you're just out of fire energy. You just don't have anything to search for anymore. And you look through Tord's deck and it's just like, yeah, there's still 87 fire energy left in my deck. I'm never going to run out. It's just an infinite supply.
Sounds nice to me.
Yeah. Just infinite fire energy. You get to search for 2 every turn.
Okay, so Welder's going to draw toward 3 cards. If he can find the switch, he can move the Heat Ran.
He did not. So at this point, you have to wonder, is this where you make the desperation play of using Ninetales' ability to bring out a Malamar and prevent an attack? It could buy you a turn, prevent your Heatran from getting knocked out.
Comes at the cost of 2 fire energy.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, when you have 87 more where that came from, it's not the biggest detriment, but still flipping another Tails. Tord needs to take some lessons from Jimmy.
So this may open the door for you. I still think Tord is in a good position to win this game, but it is going to be dangerous for him. His opponent will take 2 prize cards. There's a 3 prize knockout looming on that Reshiram Charizard GX at some point, and then he can just collect 1 more prize from there. Let's see what happens here. Can you develop some sort of game plan to capitalize on this Heatran staying asleep for several turns in a row? He now has a 3rd Malamar in play, so he's completely set up at this point. Just needs to find the Pokemon to attack with, to piece together some way to win this game.
It's easier said than done. 1 Ultra Necrozma's in the discard, the other one's in the prizes. Giratina's going to keep coming back, but...
Yeah, I assume you take a knockout here, but I think there is some world where you're supposed to pass. I don't think that's this world, though. Shadow Impact for the knockout, and now Tord will have to decide which Pokemon to attack with next.
And importantly, you did find the Ultra Necrozma from his prizes.
Yeah, that is pretty big. I wonder if Tord can set up almost a checkmate position here. If you attack with Reshiram and Charizard GX at this point, it does require a GX as a response to knock it out in 1 hit. And if that's the case, then he can just power up Victini Prism Star and kind of have this situation where it's like, you have to knock out this, otherwise I'm just going to roll through you with Reshiram and Charizard. But if you do, you have to use a GX. And if you do that, then Victini can knock that out, and then I'm going to win that way. So that might be the route to victory for Tord. We'll see what he decides to go for, but I think that looks good to me. Now that can be thwarted if Yu finds those custom catchers and goes after the Victini Prism Star. That would present an awkward situation, but these are the things you got to be thinking about at this point. How am I getting my final prize cards before my opponent? And Tord continuing to draw through his deck. I think now he's gotten all of his fire energy out of his deck. We see the Stellar Wish. I think there's 5 trainers in his top 5 cards. Oh, 3. 3's like 5, right?
3 is closer to 5 than to 1. Not technically, actually. It's
If we're playing Price is Right rules, then it is.
got to get as close to 5 without going over.
All right, so these are the closing moments of this second game. There's just a few turns left. Will Tord Reklev be able to close it out and advance to a 2-0 record at the World Championships? Or will Yu Ito take game number 2 with his Malamar deck, thanks to a golden opportunity with Inkay, the hero with Hypnosis?
It does sort of seem like Tord has done everything right this game. He's got so many tools at his disposal. Yu has managed to cobble together 3 Malamar and a single Giratina and is still somehow in this. It's just really interesting to see the different paths these decks can take to victory.
Okay, so Tord is using the ability with Ninetales here, the 9 Temptations, bringing out the Malamar with the escape board on it, and he's trying to figure out, what do I attack with? Do I use Victini Prism Star, shuffle all my energy back into my deck, or do I just attack with the big tag team? I think both have their merits. I lean towards attacking with the tag team. If you take away the Malamar, there's no way that Reshiram and Charizard can get knocked out next turn. There's just not enough energy acceleration, but Tord is valuing getting all those fire energy back into his deck. That looks like 11 fire energy thrown back into his deck with Infinity, that Victini Prism Star. And that's a lot of uses for Ninetales' ability as this game closes.
Yeah, you like 220 damage, plus having access to all your fire energy again with Giant Hearth to get rid of with 9 Temptations. What a powerful effect that is. And an effect that a lot of players are overlooking with traditional Reshiram and Charizard decks, favoring Green's Exploration instead of Stellar Wishing with Jirachi and playing this Ninetales at all.
So this presents another interesting scenario for you. So Tord clearly has access to another usage of the 9 Temptations from Ninetales, which means he can go after another Malamar and knock it out. So in order for Ultra Necrozma GX to get powered up, you might need to actually play it down this turn and attach energy to it, which means Tord would just be able to then bring that out instead and win the game. So this may be another method of essentially locking your opponent out of the game by taking out the Malamar this turn. You put them in a spot where it's not even possible for Ultra Necrozma GX to come out and take out your Reshiram and Charizard in a single hit. So perhaps this was the same kind of line of strategy, just a different way of achieving it.
In any way, you force the Ultra Necrozma to be played, and then you take advantage of that because Tord has more than one threatening attacker right now that can take that knockout.
So I think the key for you is going to be getting down another Inkay. But I don't even know if that's enough. He might need some help somewhere along the way. He's going to play this reset stamp. He also gets rid of the Giant Hearth. So he's going to force Tord to draw into those fire energy. That might be his best chance at winning.
Yeah, it's very important that both of those cards come down on the same turn.
Yeah, and now unfortunately, Viridian Forest does still allow Tord to search for a fire energy. So if he draws one of the 11 he shuffled in, he can just Viridian Forest for the other, and he gets 2 cards off of the reset stamp.
Looks like he found another Ninetales. That's not going to help him.
Yeah, but at this point, are you just looking at the situation and saying, look, I got to get lucky. Maybe I just bench the Ultra Necrozma and hope for the best.
It's looking like you will need 3 knockouts to win this game, whereas Tord is trying to finagle a situation where he only has to take 1, but it looks like you is not wanting to give it up to him just yet. So he will not be benching Ultra Necrozma this turn.
All right, Shadow Impact for the knockout. Tord does draw the fire energy for the turn.
As well as a Dedenne GX.
That can draw him 6 fire energy.
We could have 7 fire energy. Then we could discard a fire energy and get another fire energy.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah. When you have 18 fire energy to play with, the world is your oyster.
We do need that Victini Prism Star to head to the Lost Zone. It is a Prism Star card. So it needs to go where it belongs. But,
the corner by itself to think about what it's done.
Exactly.
220 damage on a Prism. Oh.
But yeah, it's important just because you cannot recover those cards.
Yeah.
There's no more Rescue Stretcher in the standard format, but there are some ways to get Pokemon back, and that has been resolved. Victini, you had a good run in the discard pile, but you should go to the Lost.
Friends.
Yeah. Viridian Forest getting used here. We do see the fire energy coming into Tord's hand, and we will likely see him target down another Malamar on the bench, preventing 1 Psychic Recharge on the next turn.
And at that point, it seems like this is locked. If a Malamar is knocked out, then even if Ultra Necrozma hits the board, it can't be powered up.
Yeah, it is interesting because you cannot use Flare Strike 2 turns in a row, so it's not a guarantee game over.
Yep.
But with this Dedenne change from Dedenne GX, it's likely that Tord can draw into a switch or something like that. And then we see another Pal Pad, and he's just all in on fire energy and welder.
Yeah, the decisions that Tord has made with this deck are quite interesting because he does have to have so much space dedicated to just his 18 fire energy, and then choosing to put in a couple copies of Pal Pad as well it limits his spots for tech choices, but it really elevates his consistency.
Yeah. We see him play this Cherish Ball for another Dedenne GX. Just get that into his hand. You cannot use more than one Dede change ability per turn, but that does not make it any less powerful. Well, I guess it would be much more powerful if you could Dede change 4 times in a turn, but it's still a great ability, of course. And Tord, he's just doing what he needs to do. He's saying, I need to make sure if my opponent plays Reset Stamp, I draw the cards I need. Let's just burn through all these cards that I don't need anymore, try to set myself up for a win. And he's even got this Welder now. He can put down the Turtonator, Welder 2 Fire Energy to it, and pretty much guarantee a knockout on his next turn. Basically say, hey, if you can't knock out this Reshiram and Charizard GX on your next turn, I am going to get a game-winning knockout.
And even if you can, I'm setting it up so that over the next 2 turns, before you can take 2 more knockouts, I'm going to get 1 at the very least. But this is what we come to expect from Tord Reklev. I mean, yes, we've seen him on Zoroark GX for the better part of the last 2 years, but even in a brand new meta with a brand new deck, he's still the guy to beat.
Yeah, he's actually just going to send out Turtonator. Say, I'm not even going to give you a chance to do some hypnosis garbage, keep my Reshiram and Charizard asleep. I'm going to attack with my non-GX instead.
Discard 2 Fire Energy. There's 100 damage for Explosive Jet.
Yeah, I think he's trying to figure out where to discard the energy from. I think 1 from the active, 1 from the bench is the safest split.
Yeah, important to note, it says discard any amount of Fire Energy from your Pokemon. Does not say from your active. So it can come from anywhere.
Yeah, if there were no Viridian Forest in play, this would be a trickier decision, but because you always have access to a Fire Energy, I think that's going to be the safest decision on what to do with your energy. And Yu is now in a tough spot. Now, he is not out of it quite yet. He can put down Ultra Necrozma GX with that Beast Energy Prism Star. He can Psychic Recharge to it, and then put his fate in the hands of his trusty Inkay once more and hope that Hypnosis gets the job done. He just needs to buy enough time to charge up Ultra Necrozma and then play 2 custom catchers to go after Reshiram and Charizard GX for the game-winning knockout. That's his one plan. He's got to go for it.
We can see he's identified the game plan. He understands that he's got to take this risk here, otherwise he just does not have a chance. So he's going to go for it.
It could come down to Hypnosis once again.
Wouldn't be the first time. Not going to be the last.
Probably not the last this weekend. All right, so he does find the double custom catcher. He's going to need that in hand for next turn. Needs to Psychic Recharge this turn and go for the Hypnosis. He also has an option for Gengar and Mimikyu GX. That is actually devastating for Tord. That's going to punish the way he discarded his energy. He can use that Horror House GX attack, prevent Tord from playing any cards from his hand, which means he can't attach energy, and this might buy him enough time to power up the Ultra Necrozma and go for the game-winning double custom catcher.
And it looks like that is what you is thinking about here.
Has he found a way to pull this one off? Does he have enough psychic energy in his discard pile? Does he have one in there right now to even recharge?
It's a good question. Tord hasn't really been knocking out Pokemon that have energy on them, so
right.
Unless Yu has done the job of discarding them himself.
And he put 2 on the Inkay just to prepare. There are no psychic in his discard right now. Wow, so now you got a decision to make. So Yu has 1 switch in his, oh wait, there's 1 psychic in his discard. There's no decision.
Okay.
This may do it. He's gonna retreat. And then, oh, he's gonna burn a switch as well. And just custom catcher, oh, he's got 3 of them. All right, and now we see the second Psychic Recharge, and Horror House GX. Tord cannot play any cards from his hand. Boy, this is interesting.
He can still search with Viridian Forest.
Yeah, he can still use Ninetales' ability, and I'm wondering if that's actually worth doing. So it's a weird spot. Your opponent needs a switch to really do anything here. You could just use 9 Temptations and bring out Ultra Necrozma, but it looks like that's not what he wants to do. Has Yu Ito found a way to win this game? It all goes back to those Hypnosis sleep flips that bought him crucial turns in the middle of this game.
Yeah, he got off to a very slow start. Things were looking quite inconsistent for him, but managed to buy himself some time and capitalize on it.
Is there a Psychic Energy? Is there any energy card in his deck?
He's only playing 7 Psychic Energy, 2 Metal, and that Beast Energy.
Will he be able to pay the retreat cost? He's just got a Custom Catcher and draw 2 cards.
But he needs 2 Custom Catchers to be able to pull out the Reshiram and Charizard. Or he did.
He drew a switch. Oh, he's got a Lily. He needs to draw his 4th and final Custom Catcher. He draws his entire deck, and it is there. He's going to Custom Catcher out Reshiram and Charizard GX and Photon Geyser for exactly 270 damage and take game number 2 from Tord Reklev. Wow, it seemed like Tord had found a way to seal the game up, but that Gengar and Mimikyu GX coming in clutch at the end of the game, preventing his opponent from playing any cards. That's gotta hurt if you're Tord.
What a comeback there for you. So what could Tord have done differently? With his Turtonator, he opted to discard a Fire Energy from each Turtonator and Reshiram and Charizard. Clearly not prepared for being punished by Horror House GX. Could he have discarded differently to, I guess, try and insulate himself from that situation?
Yes, he could have. I think he was hedging more against like a reset stamp play where his hand would get disrupted. But yeah, your alternative would have been to only discard energy from Reshiram and Charizard GX to leave all the energy on Turtonator. So then if your opponent tries to use Horror House GX, you're still left with the 5 fire energy in play, and I think you still get the knockout. But yeah, a lot of these Malamar decks don't even play Gengar and Mimikyu GX, so it's not something you exactly expect, especially not the Ultra Necrozma version.
Yeah, you'd been mentioning that Espeon and Deoxys GX might be popping up in Malamar versions from here.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think Tord played around one thing and lost to the other thing. It's just unfortunate.
Well, there's still about 8 minutes on the clock. We saw Tord win game 1 very, very quickly. So he certainly has a deck that's capable of, you know, taking a fast knockout. If you does not have a bench, there's game 3.
That's right. Anything can happen in the Pokemon TCG. So these players are going to set up for a 3rd and deciding game. Hopefully we have time to close it out. Looks like Tord has a bunch of fire energy and no basic Pokemon, so he'll have to shuffle in his hand and draw a new hand of 7 cards until he finds a basic Pokemon. But yeah, we don't have a lot of time left.
Nope. And especially after game number 1, I figured we would have a conclusion to this series, but game 2 was quite slow. We saw you get through his entire deck there right at the end.
Yeah, and Hypnosis was the game winner, right? If it wasn't for that 2-turn sequence of that Heatran GX staying asleep, Tord would have just steamrolled that game easily, but
I mean,
Inkay is
you for coming from behind and seeing the necessary things that had to happen for him to win that game.
Yeah. It just comes down to Inkay is just a powerful force, you know?
Beware of the Hypnosis.
Yep. It'll get you. All right, kicking off game number 3 here at the World Championships. Round number 2 between Tord Reklev and Yu Ito. Tord will be going first in this game, and we'll see if he can get yet another explosive start to kick things off. Looks like yes. Dedenne GX tends to make everything flow nicely. And when you have this Cherish Ball, this brand new item card that just says, search your deck for a Pokemon GX, reveal it, put it into your hand, and it lets you play an item card and essentially discard your hand and draw 6 cards. It does take up a bench spot, but it's pretty good. Go grab Dedenne GX, draw 6 cards. You still get to play your supporter card for the turn. And once again, we'll see the turn 1 Dede change and see if he can find that trademark Welder on the first turn.
He does, but he doesn't actually have energy to go along with it until he
now.
uses that giant hearth.
Yes.
Yeah, before the rotation, Dedenne GX, obviously coming from Unbroken Bonds, was finding its way into some decks, but you did always have the risk of it needs to be played on the bench, and Guzma was always there to potentially take 2 easy prizes off of it. Now that Guzma isn't available, it's just a lot safer to play Dedenne in any deck that might need added consistency.
Yep, so once again, turn 1 Welder. This is exactly what Tord needs to do. He's also got a Cherish Ball and a Pokemon Communication. He could play both of those to go search out a specific Pokemon if he wanted to. Perhaps get the Vulpix into play. We'll see if he wants to do that or not, or just grab another big Pokemon GX to put on his bench.
I'm going to favor another copy of Reshiram and Charizard, but then just send it right back into the deck and search out that Vulpix. Wants to have access to Ninetales as quickly as possible to be able to discard 2 Fire Energy and pull up any Pokemon from the bench.
And he has signaled that he is going to pass the turn. So now it will be on Yu Ito to have a good setup. He has not had a good setup in either of the 2 games. We'll see if he can change that here in the 3rd game. He is starting off with that Jirachi for the 2nd game in a row. And we'll see how many Inkay he can get down, if he can get an energy attachment for the turn. These are all the important things you're looking for. Viridian Forest coming down. Viridian Forest is an excellent card in this Malamar deck. Almost seems tailor-made for it. You know, you just discard a Psychic Energy to fuel Psychic Recharge. Then you go search for a Psychic Energy to attach for the turn. Of course, your opponent gets to use it as well, but that's whatever. Usually, when you're playing Malamar, you don't care what your opponent does. You're just trying to power up your guys.
As long as it benefits you more, you're okay.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why this Malamar deck is able to only run 7 Psychic Energy, even though energy are so important, and they want to be Psychic Recharging several of them every single turn. When they're just going to be recycled into your discard pile and then pulled directly back out, you need a limited amount of them.
Yeah, and this is an excellent start for you so far. Get the Giratina down, get an energy attached to it, even the spell tag for good measure. Got an Inkay down. He would love to find a 2nd Inkay if possible. Still has Stellar Wish available. Could find a Mysterious Treasure or a Pokemon Communication, but already has Mysterious Treasure in hand. So this will be his best start so far. Gets multiple Inkay down, gets an energy attachment, gets 2 energy into the discard pile to Psychic Recharge later. This is the dream start for a Malamar deck. Everything you need right here. If he can follow it up with turn 2, getting a couple Malamar into play, he'll be in great shape. So the Jirachi started off in the wrong direction and then accidentally got turned to the correct direction.
There you go.
Doesn't matter how you get there. We got the right result.
Anybody who says it's about the journey is lying.
And wow, he picked up another Mysterious Treasure. He could play that to get yet another Inkay or just save it to get a Malamar next turn. Looks like that is what he's deciding to do. And the clock is ticking down. There's just under 2 minutes at this point. It seems unlikely that Tord will be able to knock out, 6 Pokemon worth of prize cards with no GX in play right now.
Yeah, it's looking like this one is going to be a draw, which is not terribly satisfying on either side, but draws today certainly matter more than they did yesterday. These players are looking to get enough match points to secure top 8 in this tournament, and even a single match point could help.
All right, so we did see Tord Welder onto the Turtonator on the bench. And now he can play his Giant Hearth. He's already used the effect of Viridian Forest, but now he can use the effect of the Giant Hearth to go search for 2 more fire energy. And he'll certainly get the Flare Strike off this turn. That poor Jirachi is going to get obliterated by 460 damage, but just got to do what you got to do, you know.
It's a bit over what's necessary. But we don't have time for good manners when there's only 20 seconds on the clock.
Well, he might also just go after an Inkay. And yes, exactly with that 9 Temptations ability, going after Inkay, that's going to eat the Flare Strike, 230 damage. And we'll get the knockout. And it looks like our clock has run out. All zeros, which means we'll enter the additional 3 turns, which I do not believe will be long enough for either player to take this victory.
Is there ever a situation where you is able to take 3 fast knockouts here, starting with the Reshiram and Charizard?
He only gets 2 turns, so
yeah. So no.
Probably not. It would involve if he could knock out Reshiram and Charizard GX this turn, and then somehow get Mega Sableye and Tyranitar GX powered up with 5 Darkness Energy. He could then knock out Dedenne GX for the final 3 prize cards. We'll see if that one happens.
Nope.
Oh, darn.
But it's a good thought.
Yeah, that is
Using
a
your
way
brain.
to win. Yeah. Use 6 cards that aren't in your deck and cheat by attaching 5 Darkness Energy at once. Maybe nobody will notice. I think we do have, we had at least one player advance through day 1 with the Dark Toolbox deck.
Oh, we did?
Yeah,
Okay.
Zachary Krekler, who also started off 1-0 in this tournament, playing that Weavile GX-based Dark Toolbox. So perhaps we'll see that at some point today.
Very
Typically
cool.
does play the Mega Sableye and Tyranitar. But for now, we are in our extra 3 turns. And it looks like you did not pull off an attack on his turn. Tord going to continue to attack with his Reshiram and Charizard GX, but just won't be enough. He's going to go after the Giratina with 9 Temptations. And, you know, you got to believe if this game did play out, Tord would probably be heavily favored, but
Yep.
it just is not the way it works.
Unfortunately, this wasn't game 2 for him. If it was, this draw could instead be a win in his favor, but it's looking like that's not going to be the case. Spell tag, 40 damage onto Reshiram and Charizard.
And yeah, I
This
think
should
that's
be turn 2 for you.
it's probably going to wrap things up here for round number 2. See the energy go on to Sableye. He can Quick Hunt or Curse Drop. Neither are very appealing options in this portion of the game. Even if you could put 3 damage counters on all of your opponent's Pokemon, it wouldn't do anything in this spot. So looking ahead for both of these players, you know, a tie early on in the tournament is not ideal.
Nope.
The World Championship format is very unforgiving in terms of losses and ties. As we do see a tie right here. You know, last year, players that had a 5-1-1 record were not guaranteed to make top 8.
That's very scary.
There was a player at 5-1-1 who took 9th place last year. So both these players now need to know that the pressure is on. There's very little room for error. You might need to win all the rest of